Your voice, your vote. Your 2013 election coverage leader. Canterbury Mornings with Chris Lynch.
Newstalk ZB, Canterbury Mornings with Chris Lynch, your voice, your vote. Joining me live in the studio this morning is Mayoral candidates, hopefuls Lianne, Dalziel, Paul Lonsdale. Welcome to you both to the program this morning.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Let's forget the coin tosses and your opening speeches. I want to get straight to it. This is too important. I want to discuss this first. You both believe relations between the Christchurch City Council and its neighbouring councils need to be strengthened, but how do you actually see that happen? Lianne, how do you see this working? Are we talking supersize me here?
No, I think that what we have to do is establish a relationship. As I've been saying, I don't think that there's any reason why the Waimak District Council, the Selwyn District Council deserve Christchurch City at the moment. So Christchurch...
Well, exactly, they don't do that
No,
at the
they
moment.
don't. And Waimak District Council actually won an award, a nationwide award for its community engagement post the earthquakes. Their response was utterly extraordinary, and they engaged their communities in such a way that they all knew what was going on. And it was an amazing thing to watch. And it really was quite regretful in my mind that Christchurch City really didn't take a leaf out of their book. So what we have to do is we have to establish those relationships early. So I intend to have a meeting with all councillors, with the ECAN commissioners, straight up. Now, I've found out that, in fact, they haven't been meeting regularly. This should be just a no-brainer. The same with the other councils in the area. We've got to bring the councillors together so that we establish personal relationships, and then we send the signal to the organisations that we are representing that they need to be doing the same thing.
So if you become Mayor of Christchurch, you will completely rule out the idea of a super city Christchurch council? No,
that's up for the people of the region to decide, and we will be having a representation review in the next 3 years. We've been told that, we know that that's the law, and we're required to do it. But I want to use that as an opportunity, not so much to have a debate about making things bigger and pulling decisions away from communities. I actually want to use that as an opportunity about how we get decision-making out to the community through the community boards and much closer engagement with communities.
Paul Lonsdale, you've been quoted in the Christchurch press this morning as saying we need to have a debate about some sort of super city. What do you mean by that?
Well, it's not so much debate, it's actually we got to start conversations. As Lianne said, it is actually getting those conversation relationships put in place. And we've got to think about the city in the future. I think if we are looking at it strategically, we are going to be heading out that way with our population. It's heading that way now. And if we don't start thinking about the long-term future, transportation issue is going to become a problem. We've got to actually also look at the viability of Christchurch itself. I think that Christchurch is going to become a great city in the future, and I think our neighbours are going to want to be a part of that.
But Waimak and Selwyn District Councils, they've been performing brilliantly. Why on earth would anybody want to entertain the idea of magnetising them to a bloated council like our one we've got at the moment?
Wouldn't you like to think that we could have a virtual unitary authority, as it were, so that we could operate together in a collaborative way? But in order to do that, you've got to establish the relationships first. So instead of starting at the end point, which is let's have a supersized city, let's say, what would it take in order for us to work collaboratively and get the best of what all of the councils have to offer? Because ECAN has to come into the mix as well, which is why I want to have ECAN commissioners meet with the councillors very, very soon, in fact, before Christmas.
I'll come back to ECAN later in the program. I want to talk about these buzzwords that I'm getting a little bit annoyed about. You know, the buzzwords, unity, transparency, more community involvement. Look, they're just words. Give me an action plan, both of you. I'll start with you, Paul Lonsdale, an action plan to produce so-called unity, transparency, and more community involvement. How are you going to achieve that?
Well, first of all, I think the first thing we need to do is obviously we actually need to build a high-performing council team, and that's starting with the hiring of the chief executive. We need to create a culture of financial and ethical accountability, and they all actually need to forge stakeholder consensus. So that's around talking to the community, making sure that we are working with the community to actually get a better result. I think it's going the wrong way around. I think the decisions have been coming from management down to the community rather than the community back to the management. So that is about strengthening the community boards.
You make a good point there. It seems to me there are a lot of managers inside this council. There's over, 200
276 if you
that appear
include-
to be, by all accounts, the anecdotal evidence suggests they're running this council. It's not the mayor, it's not the councillors. And you say?
I'd agree. I think if you have a look at some of the decisions I've faced coming from the other way around, from the Business Association, we've seen decisions being made around the city centre that haven't really been discussed with the people that actually are doing business in there. And I think the same will apply to the communities. They're getting decisions made for their community that haven't come from the community. They've been decisions made at the management level from the council.
Lianne Dalziel, is that a fair point? We have got too many councillors and, well, we've got a mayor and a council. That's fine, but it seems to me that we've got a lot of managers making the decisions for people of Christchurch. And is that the right way to go about things, considering they were never voted in by the people of Christchurch?
There are two things happening. So one is the existence of SERA, which didn't exist in 2010, which is when we had our last council election. So actually some of the problems that are being identified now pre-existed the earthquakes, and you're quite right. There were no committee structures in place back in 2000, and I can't remember exactly when they left the frame. I think it was about 2007, might have been earlier. And as a result, you're quite right. The work was being generated by the staff, and really the staff were setting the agenda. So the chief executive and the mayor were setting the agenda, and the councillors themselves were not playing the strong role that I would certainly want them to play. But with the existence of SERA, a lot of the decision making has been pulled away from the city council. And I'm not going to, and I said this the other night, I'm not going to spend a minute trying to, attribute blame because that's so meaningless. What we have to do is we actually have to stop this nonsense of the Christchurch City Council and SERA at loggerheads with each other. They've really got to come on board together.
See, Lianne, you made a good point there. Many people I've spoken to, and this is for both you, are saying they're not going to vote. Why would they bother voting in this election when at the end of the day, the government is running this city, SERA is running this city, the CCDU has the greater oversight. Bob Parker, for better or worse, is just happy to kiss babies and smiles, and a lot of the powers from the council have effectively been taken away. So my question to both of you this morning is, why would you bother when it seems to me SERA, the government and the CCDU is running this city?
This government has already proven that if it is not satisfied with progress, then it will simply extend its intervention, and they did that.
Or bring in commissioners.
But they did that with ECAN. So ECAN was supposed to have their commissioners disappear 2013. That this election, we're having them extended now to 2016. So what I say to the people of Christchurch is that we've got 2.5 years to get the Christchurch City Council back on track so that the government does trust it to take over the role of SERA. Now, when I say take over the role, I say take over the leadership of the recovery. We have to have an ongoing partnership with central government. It's too big for the Christchurch City Council on its own, but it's not something that the government should be doing on its own.
Paul Lonsdale, you're a man who's worked alongside SERA, with SERA. Are you happy with their progress? Do you feel, though, if you become mayor, you are going to have to do something to, in a way, get rid of them and allow to have more of a voice of the people of Christchurch?
I don't think it's about getting rid of them. I think it's about them having...
Or distilling their responsibilities.
It's having confidence in the council and having trust that they can actually do the right job. But it's also about the council at the moment, because they're there, not crossing over work where they're actually doing the same job and making sure we just plug any holes that are actually there. So it's about working as a team, and as I say, we've got to get the trust back, but it's just not the trust of the government. We've got to get the trust back of the people, which we haven't got at this point.
You see, what I'm always reminded about is that Roger Sutton and SERA are effectively the yes men to the government. Am I right in that?
But this is the problem is the lack of a layer of governance between the chief executive and the minister. And by having the government department structure, and I've always said it was the wrong structure, if they'd put a layer of governance in, then Roger Sutton would be reporting to a board and not reporting to a minister. And that's the only problem that I see.
But does another layer of governance mean another layer of bureaucracy?
No.
Do we have to get
governance
this done?
actually means holding people to account, and it means that you don't have political interference in decision making. It actually takes the politics out of the situation.